Hey, good morning everyone. Thanks again for joining us on Facebook and YouTube. This is our last video for this series, I Object, Why Some People Disbelieve. And today I wanted to spend just a few minutes reviewing some of the things that we've learned in this class as we've worked through the book, Confronting Christianity, 12 Hard Questions for the World's Largest Religion by Rebecca McLaughlin. For just about as long as I can remember, I've been interested in finding answers for the tough questions people often have about Christianity and the Bible. So it might be no surprise then that I have a doctorate in biblical studies. I have really enjoyed this series, and I think that we've been able to find some good things to talk about, good things to discuss in this class. And so I wanted to review some of that for you this morning. Now, over the last 3 months, we've looked at the following questions, and I'll leave them up here on the screen for you for a little bit so you can see them and think about them as we talk about them for just a minute. Aren't we better off without religion? Doesn't Christianity crush diversity? How can you say there's only one true faith? Doesn't religion hinder morality? Doesn't religion cause violence? How can you take the Bible literally? Hasn't science disproved Christianity? Doesn't Christianity denigrate women? Isn't Christianity homophobic? Doesn't the Bible condone slavery? How could a loving God allow so much suffering? And the last one, how could a loving God send people to hell? Now, like I said, I'm going to leave these questions up on the screen because I want you to be able to see them as I'm talking about them. These questions deal with a range of issues. They deal with issues of sociology and ethics. They deal with metaphysical issues and how we understand the role of science and its interaction with the spiritual world. And speaking of that, I don't think the Bible actually presents the physical and spiritual worlds as separated as we often think. But that's another conversation for another time. These questions also deal with sexuality, suffering, sin and death, love and judgment. I think you could make an argument that there isn't a single facet of human nature or reality that doesn't show up at least once in these 12 questions. And that's ultimately what I think people are looking for whenever they ask any of the big questions about life or religion. They want to find something they can believe in that won't let them down, that won't crumble under the weight of life. They're looking for something they can hold on to, something real. And that's what Christianity has to offer, a way to understand reality that speaks to our deepest desires, to be known and loved, to a way to understand suffering in the world as well as the good things in the world, as more than just happy accidents of a blind and indifferent nature. Now, if I were to spend just 5 minutes on each of these questions, that video would be an hour long, and I've tried to keep each of these videos as short as possible so they can be engaging, and so I won't also wear anybody out. We can definitely spend more time than what we've spent on each of the 12 topics. But the purpose for these videos hasn't been to give the final definitive answer for each question. Instead, what I've wanted to show in answering these questions is really kind of two big picture ideas interwoven through each of our answers. The first thing is this: there are answers to tough questions about the Christian faith. Now, over the last few months, we've been able to come up with what I think are strong answers to these tough questions. At no point have we held up our hands in surrender and said, well, you got me, I just don't know what to do with that. Now, I don't want you to think for a second that the answers we've given over the last 3 months are guaranteed to convert every non-Christian you know. I can promise you they won't satisfy everyone. But you probably already know that. What I hope you have seen is this: challenges to the Christian faith are not insurmountable. Sure, some people can mount what seem to be strong arguments against the validity or rationality of Christian faith. Maybe some of the new atheists like we've talked about during this class, guys like Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins, maybe some of them can. But even some famous anti-religion people like Richard Dawkins find opposition from other atheists who see social and personal good in religious belief, even if they're not willing to commit themselves to that personally. We've mentioned Jonathan Haidt before, and another name you might be familiar with is another British guy named Douglas Murray, who describes himself as a Christian atheist. Now, if this sounds like an oxymoron, I totally get it. But for guys like Douglas Murray, they recognize the extraordinary historical and social value in the Judeo-Christian worldview. They realize and readily affirm that the Western world was shaped by Christianity, and they applaud Christianity for its contributions. But they themselves simply do not believe in God or the divine. These guys are so close, and yet, in many ways, they're still so far away. But the point of all of this is this: there are answers to these tough questions. And I suspect that many self-identifying atheists wonder if their worldview is as strong as they claim it is. Some notable former atheists certainly found something more real for themselves. I'm thinking of folks like C.S. Lewis, another British thinker, Alistair McGrath, Peter Hitchens, brother of the late Christopher Hitchens, who was a member of the New Atheists, and even my friend and dissertation advisor, Dr. Craig Keener at Asbury Seminary, one of the world's leading New Testament scholars. Each of these guys were former atheists, or they were atheists at one point in their lives and now are committed Christians. In one point or another in their lives, they found full satisfaction to all the big questions of life in Jesus. And this brings me to my second point. I firmly believe it is important to be able to offer well-reasoned and carefully crafted arguments for why we believe what we believe. This is simply a part of owning our faith and becoming a mature Christian. But as important as it is to be able to carefully articulate why you believe what you believe, I think the most compelling defense for the Christian faith is a life lived in full and genuine devotion to God, conformed to Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit. There's a certain political commentator who has his own YouTube channel. He's not on any of the major networks. I've been watching this guy off and on for about 4 years now. Back when I started watching him in 2016, he readily identified as an atheist. That was one of the reasons why I watched him, because I saw him wrestle honestly with that issue and other issues that I was interested in, issues like free speech, individual liberties, things like that. This guy, again, 4 years ago, when he was still kind of proudly or happily describing himself as an atheist, he loved having guys on his show like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. But over the course of the last 2 years, he befriended another gentleman, a college professor, who has very boldly challenged the atheistic worldview, but who's generally quiet about his own religious beliefs. These two guys eventually went on a tour together, speaking to sold-out theaters around the world, talking about ideas of free speech, personal responsibility, and yes, they would even sometimes discuss some notions of the divine and spirituality and how all that plays into what life is. Not that long ago, I was listening to the political commentator speak with a different professor, a devout Christian and mathematics professor from Oxford. And the political commentator dropped a bomb on everyone in the audience when he said, "Because of my time with my friend, I now no longer consider myself an atheist." This was a huge and dramatic shift for him. And even though he wouldn't necessarily say he's religious, he is certainly closer now than when he was when I first started watching him. So what was the difference? What happened? Well, he cited his time with his friend. And his friend believes and lives like he believes there has to be something more to the world, more to life, more to living than the atheistic worldview. Their relationship grew and strengthened over weeks and weeks of traveling and working together. And the political commentator found something more real. Guys, I think that's a perfect analogy for how we can share and spread Christian faith. We must be willing to play the long game and live alongside the folks whom we want to become Christians. We may not always have all the answers for all their questions, but the effect of living alongside someone and suffering and rejoicing with them, walking day to day with them through whatever it is, that effect is compelling. So let's do this. Let's commit to letting others see what Jesus looks like by first showing them and then telling them. I think that's the most effective way to bring about lasting change in somebody's life. And so as we wrap up this series, guys, I want to say thank you again for joining me on this journey over the last 3 months. It has been fun, and I know I have learned a lot, and I hope y'all have too. Let me encourage you one last time to, if you would, please share these videos if you found them valuable to you. We hope to be a blessing to as many people as possible, and one way to do that is to increase our visibility on social media. It has been incredible how, despite the different phases of quarantine we've been in for the last 4 months, our church's social media presence has skyrocketed during that time. With your help, we went from somewhere around 250 likes on our Facebook page in March to now over 600 likes on our page. Guys, that means that hundreds of more people each week are hearing about the good things that God is doing through our little church here in Nicholasville, Kentucky. And that's a reason to celebrate. Thanks again, everybody, and I hope you have a good week. Bye-bye.